and welcome to the Vegan Life Magazine podcast, the podcast that's all about vegan food and how to enjoy it. And this different music heralds our world tour, which continues. Last week we were in Japan. This week we're doing all of Africa. Sure, that's not overly ambitious at all. Why don't we meet our chefs? Tomi Makanjuola is a returning guest. She's the founder of The Vegan Nigerian. Also, she's the author of The Plantain Cookbook and runs events and pop-up restaurants around London. And Helen, who's also known as Ethiopian Foodie, sells her own spice blends that are made in Ethiopia and hand-picked by Helen's grandmother and shipped over to the UK. And that's not only is that the most adorable thing ever, Helen, that's also a great business model. I should be putting my grandmother to work like that. No my spices, I just put it down the salt mines. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, she's got some killer Ethiopian recipes and hopefully we'll extract some from her. Anyway, both of you, welcome.
Yay! Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. It's so exciting. Now, we've got some questions that people have sent in. There's lots of questions I want to ask you too. But I'm going to start with Sade's question, which is, where are the guests from? If West Africa, can you ask for their best jollof rice recipe, please? So why don't you talk a little bit about where you're from, if that's I don't know how applicable that question is. But Tomi, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I'm from Nigeria, which is located in West Africa. I was born and raised there, so all of my sort of food influence, that's where it all comes from, watching my parents and my grandparents cook. And the question about jollof rice, I get asked it all the time, so I'm used to it.
You're just ready.
I'm ready. I'm ready to just whip it out whenever.
Okay. Well, whip it out. Why not?
Yeah. So the first thing to say is that each West African country has their own take on jollof rice. It is said to have originated in Senegal, but Nigerians have kind of made it their own. And not to be biased or anything, but I think we make it the best way.
Well, since there isn't anyone from Senegal here, I'm going to say, of course you do.
Ghana. Hello.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
What can I
This
say?
is the East African just adding fire to the...
Stir in the pot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for anyone who doesn't know what jollof rice is, it's basically a one-pot dish. You've got rice cooked in a blend of peppers, tomatoes normally, and then you would spice it with, typically it's curry powder and dried thyme. And you just allow that to cook. It sounds so simple, and it really is that simple, but it's just a unique taste. It's a unique dish. It's loved by everyone across the country. It's used to celebrate, big occasions, from weddings to births to everything in between. You'll always find jollof rice at every occasion. That is it. And then my top tip for cooking jollof rice, actually, the way that I've come to kind of make it my own, is I use a type of rice that they call golden cellar basmati rice. And I just put it above any other type of rice because it is so flavorful, has such a great aroma, and it just works great in the dish. So, yeah.
How do you, because people have different methods, how do you actually cook the rice?
Yeah, so you actually need to start with a stew base. So you've got your peppers, red bell peppers, tomatoes, and onions, which you blend together to make a smooth sauce. You fry that sauce in a bit of oil. You add some onions in there as well. You add your seasoning, so your curry powder, your dried thyme, add a bit of salt to your taste. And then you allow that to bubble up for a while, and then you add your rice. So you wash your rice and then you add it in. Stir it, and then the thing you want to do is to leave it to cook uninterrupted for at least maybe 20 to 25 minutes. Because if you keep stirring it, if you get impatient and you can't help yourself and you keep stirring it, you might end up with like really mushy rice.
I definitely feel like you're talking specifically to me right now, but go on.
Me too. I'm taking tips.
Yeah. You don't want a risotto. It needs to be nice and light and fluffy.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that just experience teaches you to eyeball how much rice to put into that.
Yes. Yeah. Gosh, I mean, Yeah, it's taken me a while as well to even like come up with measurements for a jollof rice recipe. I mean, based on the work that I do, I have to measure everything. Otherwise, people are like, a dash of this, a handful of that. Like, what does that mean? So yeah, it's taken a while for me as well to actually, pin down a recipe that works every time.
Okay. Is it sort of about half the volume of rice to your sauce? I'm thinking.
Yeah, actually, you're not far off. So the sauce does need to sort of overpower the rice. So the rice is essentially cooking and steaming within the sauce. And what happens at the end of the cooking time is that the rice should have absorbed most of the sauce. So you shouldn't have any sort of liquid sort of at the bottom or anything like that. The rice absorbs it, and this is what gives it its signature bright orange color, actually. The rice just takes on all of that lovely, yummy sauce. So good.
Helen, tell us a bit about where you're from, and do you do jollof rice?
No, but I will after this.
Yeah, I think we all will after
No,
this.
I have attempted. I've grown up all over, so I have definitely tried to make it. Maybe it wasn't the most successful, but it will be after this insight that I just got.
It's one of those things that it's sort of like making bread. It's a very simple recipe, but kind of might take a lifetime to really perfect.
Dude, like, exactly. But it's probably also really worth it because you can really just enjoy the rice, right? Like, by itself.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want that? Like, one pot miracle. Yeah, I can eat that.
I am so down with carbs.
Me. So I was born in Ethiopia and I grew up there until I was like 13 or something. And then I moved to boarding school in Swaziland and I was there for the next 7 years. So just Southern Africa for some time.
Wow.
And then I went to the States.
I mean, I kind of, this is not part of the podcast, but I just want to ask you, what the hell was that experience like?
I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
Channeled through my food. I'm kidding. And then I went to the States for my undergrad, and then I came to the UK to do my master's, and then my husband was here, and then we just decided to settle. Now, I think I'm going to, probably the UK is the third country that I've lived the longest in, but in like 4 chunks. So now I'm in the UK, and
amazing.
That is that. That's where I'm from.
Yeah. So, everywhere. This is not a listener question, and I have to credit Tomi with sort of devising this question. It's such a brilliant question, which is just, what are your kind of go-to base spices when you're cooking? Helen, let's start with you. Like, what are the ones that you just reach for pretty much every meal? What are the ones that go in there?
I was going to make a joke and say salt, but
you can have that. Let me pause. Let me pause your answer because Afia is here.
Yay! More people to the party.
Yay!
Yay! You made it.
So Afia, tell us a bit about where you're from and do you have a jollof rice recipe?
Yeah, I'm from Ghana. I mean, I'm Canadian, but my family's originally from Ghana. Yes, I have a jollof rice recipe. I personally think that my mom makes the best jollof rice, regardless of whether you're from Ghana or Nigeria. I really cannot, I can't be bothered for that whole conversation because it never goes anywhere. I'm always for the person who cooks the jollof, and I think my mom makes the best jollof. Whether that is symbolic of what Ghanaian jollof is, then that's everyone else's decision to make. But I personally think that, my mom has the best jollof rice. I've tried to replicate her recipe as best as I can, but there's just something about how she makes it. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's always a magic ingredient, I think, with a family member. Tomi and I were actually talking before we started recording. You're working on you're trying to do an almost definitive Nigerian food cookbook, and therefore trying to replicate simultaneously the variations on a recipe as cooked by every mother everywhere in Nigeria, all at the same time.
All of it, just gathering details from every single mother in the country.
Helen, I just asked you, what are your go-to spices when you're cooking?
Yeah. Very good question. So if I'm cooking Ethiopian food, absolutely have to reach out for berbere. I'll say it how we say it, but you can. Berbere is basically a the kind of pepper itself is called berbere, the chili, but then the blend itself is also called berbere, right? And it's made out of, again, so controversial. Every household makes it differently. I'm gonna lean towards Afia here and be like, my family makes the best one. So I've only tried and cooked with my own. I've actually never. I was curious once and very desperate living abroad, and I ran out of my own stash, so I bought some from a supermarket. Don't ever do it, kids. It's just horrible. It's never nice. It's so bland. It's so spicy unnecessarily, and yeah, you won't have the best experience. But yeah, if I'm cooking Ethiopian food, that's an absolute essential, and there's no replacement. I can't even lie and tell you, if you don't have it, try to do it. No, just try to get it. Try to get your hands on it, and it's very, very key for Ethiopian cooking. But outside of that, just generally, I'm the kind of person that just really enjoys food. So I have any cuisine you name, like I have something in my cupboard, so my pantry is always stocked. So pretty much I have everything. So I can't tell you what is my favorite. It depends on what I'm in the mood to cook. So like for lunch, we're having a lot of Asian stuff. So all of that, just forgive me for lumping it all together. But yeah, just
it's fine.
Anything that is like Asian, we have it. So I will highlight good quality salt, good quality pepper, good quality olive oil, like must. Yeah. Absolute must. Yeah. I don't know if there are spices, but yeah, that's it.
Don't apologize for lumping stuff together when we're attempting to cover all of the countries of Africa in one podcast. So, what are the spices like in the blend? I know you're saying just say no, kids, don't try and do this at home. But what are some of the spices that make up the Berbere spice mix?
Yeah, so the main thing is obviously the actual Berbere chili. So that is dried, and to that you add, I have to find the names for English equivalent, but I have them on my website, of course. But basically what they are in varying proportion again. So like, and the blend that you're making. So you have ajwan, so sometimes it's called bishop's weed or something, different names, nigella seeds, coriander seeds, fenugreek, cloves, ginger, garlic, and then lots of like wet herbs and like rosemary and like rue. It really depends, but it's all like different process for everything, and again in different proportions. So if you're making kilos and kilos like us, because we're selling it in the shop, then you'd get that. It's also hard to get like the English or the Latin name for it, so I try to put that on the website so that people can find the English equivalent.
Yeah.
Because there's like many names for these different spices, but that's like what it is made out of, like different blends. And it's not supposed to be overly spicy. You could like eat it like that, and you're not supposed to burn. If you are, that is wrong. It's supposed to be very earthy and loads of like depth of flavor. Like you're supposed to get like smoky, spicy, and warm, and like, like winter cinnamon feelings as well. You're supposed to get all of that. And outside of Ethiopian cooking as well, you can literally use it in your pasta sauce, like Italian stuff you can absolutely use in, or any red sauce that you're making, marinating. I know we're all vegans, but like for marinating meats and also vegetables.
We'll come on to what you do with tofu in due course.
Exactly. But it's great for that as well. So, and then you can make also quick dips with it, like with olive oil, mustard, lemon juice, and you have this amazing dip you can have with like an amazing focaccia, for example.
Wow.
Like that one is the bomb. So.
It sounds like quite a party, and it sounds like your grandmother must be exhausted. That's a lot of
Well,
spices
she's got to work. She doesn't want to rest, so... Yeah.
Tomi, let's turn to you. What are your go-to spices?
Yeah, can I just say I've just been mesmerized by everything Helen's been saying. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sold. I think I've tried it once, actually. I used it in, I'm going to pronounce this really wrong, Berbere.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, that's it.
I tried to make up a mix once, and I don't feel like I did a good job.
Yeah. So I used it.
I can't even do it.
It was so good. But yeah, so for me, Like Helen, I have a wide range of spices in my kitchen. Anything you can think of, I've got, from cumin to fennel seeds, curry powder, everything. I got it. As I mentioned before, curry powder is used a lot, and we all know that contains like a mixture of different spices. So I want to talk about one that's maybe not that well known, actually. So it's called iru. That's the Yoruba name for it. It's called iru, and it's used in a lot of our stews and soup recipes. And what it is it's fermented locust beans. And I know, it's so out there in a way. And it has this really pungent, earthy smell. Kind of offensive, if I'm being completely honest.
Oh, I'm so in. I am so in.
Yeah.
I need this.
But once you add it into your soup and your stew, it's magical. It has like this sort of umami taste to it. And it's so good. You can add it in, it's usually sold whole, but you can crush it, you can put it into your stew and, melt it in there. And it's absolutely amazing. So if anyone can get their hands on it, I highly recommend. I feel like any well-stocked African grocery store will have it, for sure.
Is it like a paste or like a powder?
No, so you buy the seeds. The seeds are soft, and they're kind of like compressed together to make like balls of these seeds, right? And so you break it apart, and then you can add the seeds in whole, or you can you just use a mortar and pestle to like turn it into a paste. So the seeds,
literally the seeds. Wow. Okay.
yeah, it's
That
pretty
sounds
unique.
awesome.
Doesn't sound like a lot of work, and it's gonna give me flavor. So
Exactly.
So I'm in. Yeah.
not like the one I just described, where you have to, I don't know, wait for the season, get the right selection, blah blah blah. You win.
Just get some stuff and bash it up. Perfect.
Exactly.
Afia, what are your go-to spices? What are the ones you always end up reaching for?
Oh, this is a good question.
It's Tommy's question. I can't take any credit for it. So
Yeah, well, it really depends on the cuisine that I'm cooking. I think the Ghanaian food, when it comes to spices, we use a really big range of spices, including spices from different other parts of the world. So for me personally, my trifecta of mixes is always curry powder, anise seeds, not star anise. They're very different spices. Anise seeds has kind of like a licorice-y smell to it, but it's very Ghanaian in the sense that when I smell it, it just reminds me of Ghanaian food because we use anise seeds a lot. So yeah, curry powder with anise seeds, some kind of pepper mix, not like the smoked or the cayenne peppers. We have like really small peppers that are very powerful. And then, yeah, so those are the things that I would generally reach for. And then garlic and onion powder because they just make any savory meal more savory. Yeah. And then bay leaf. Yes, that's it.
nice. Catherine has emailed and says, I'm a bread fiend. Oh, welcome. This is a carb-heavy show. I love trying new recipes. I find bread is so different and personal in every country. What bread does the panel make that originates in their country? And Helen, I kind of want to start with you because I once had, is it called Injera?
That's right.
Man, that was good.
It is very good, but it's also one of the most challenging.
Oh, really?
You need like prayers and all kinds of things to make it. It's like, it's not a skill that is unfortunately passed through the DNA, you have to just,
Just
I
pray.
always have like my aunt or my mom or like someone on the phone with me. Like I'm almost going to be 30 and I still struggle with that. But if you can do it.
To describe the texture, so it's like a kind of flatbread, or the one I had, it's like a sort of flatbread, but it's got a kind of
technically.
chewy, almost crumpety texture, I would say.
Yeah, so the main thing is like it's made out of this thing called Teff flour. Teff is a grain which is naturally gluten-free and apparently superfood right now. It's hot. So that's what we use, and there are different kinds. There's brown, ivory, white. In the shop right now, in my shop, we have the ivory and the brown one. And basically, it's literally it. We don't add anything to it. It's just the grain is grounded to make the flour. And then with that flour, you follow a very strict fermentation process to have your pancake ready. Mostly, depending on where you live and the temperature out of your house and your environment, it can be done within anywhere from 3 to 5 days. So initially, you'd get some sort of mother, as you would do with any sourdough bread or anything. But if you don't have it, you just have to add additional days to get the starter ready. Or sometimes when I'm so desperate, I just use bread yeast and then speed up the process. But it can be a little bit, it can be a bit too sour if you are not careful or if you use too much.
Yeah.
Literally, it's a matter of like mixing the yeast, flour, water, a nice dough. You knead it properly, cover it with water, leave it for 3 days, and change the water every 2 days so that it's not too fermented or too sour.
Wow.
And then you make a little porridge with that, and then you add the porridge back, and then you create this diluted version of the dough. And it should be lighter than a pancake, thicker than a crepe. So that is the medium you're going for.
Wow.
And then on the 5th day or something, you make it on a hot griddle pan or a non-stick pan. And it's only cooked on one side, and you know you got it if you make the round and it's just, you've got eyes, basically. We call them eyes. And it's not cracking, and it doesn't look like, it's not ashy, because sometimes it could look very ashy, like it's cracking and it's more like doughy and bready. Then you know something has gone wrong and you kind of have to try to recover it. And so then you have these beautiful eyes just bubbling. You put the lid on, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, you take it out. And then the idea is that all those eyes, when you put the stew on top, it just soaks it up, and it's yum after that.
It is. It's amazing stuff. I had no idea it was so elaborate. That's insane.
It is. It is very difficult, but really you just have to persist. And once you get to do it, it's amazing because it's just so tasty.
Yeah.
And you can also like turn it into a pancake and eat it sweet when it's not too fermented. But for me, I prefer it savory.
Yeah.
And it's just a bomb if you can
It
do it.
really is.
Just patience.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'll come back to any other breads you have, but Tomi,
cool.
what about you?
Yeah, so in Nigeria we have this specific type of bread that originated in Lagos State. It originated from this like tiny neighborhood in Lagos, right? So it is a testament that it's become so popular across the country. It's called Agege Bread. And the best way to describe it is like a soft, like really pillow soft loaf. It's made much in the same way as you would make any sort of soft loaf, right? And there are trade secrets, you know, like there are bakeries in Nigeria that specialize in Agege bread, but I've made sort of my own homemade version as well. And it's usually eaten with a variety of things. So you can eat it with, you know, tea for breakfast on its own. That's how luscious it is, with a bit of margarine on there. Or you can eat it with beans as a side. You use it to like mop up your soups or your sauces or your stews. And yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good.
That sounds amazing. Afia, what about you?
So in Ghana, we have something that's actually pretty much the same, but we don't call it Agege bread. And most of the time it's like insawon bread, or it's just like we don't really have a place that we call it. It's pretty much the same thing, but in Ghana, we have three specific different types. And we don't eat it the same way as Nigerians would. So in Ghana, we have butter bread, which is like the savory one that it's not savory, it doesn't have sugar in it. Then we have sugar bread. And then we have this one that's called tea bread. And it's like sugar and butter bread are usually eaten in the morning. Unlike Nigeria, we don't eat it with beans. I know some people eat it with beans in Nigeria, but we don't. And it's usually eaten with like hot chocolate drink. Or some kind of non-vegans will eat it with fried egg. And then the tea bread one is kind of special because it is very floury. We also don't bake these breads for long. And out of all of them, that's one of the breads that's like true bread in a sense that it's not like filled with sugar and butter and all that other type of stuff. And we usually eat it with I don't know how to. It's very unique. You can't get them at the grocery store like you could the other types. You can only get them really from people who are selling fermented porridge. And then we have this bean cake. Nigerians call it akara, but in Ghana we call it kosi. And you usually put the kosi in the tea bread, and then you eat it together. But that one you can't really find it at. It's widely eaten, but you can't find it at grocery stores like other types of breads. So
I wanna know about these fermented beans, and I wanna know about fermented porridge.
Yeah.
Finally, porridge could be interesting. Imagine.
It is like, I think that, I mean, across West Africa, there is fermentation. Obviously, when Helen was mentioning the whole process of making Injera. In Ghana, I think that different West African countries have things that are fermented, but I think that in Ghana, it's one of the, it is a big part of our different types of diets. And we have porridges that are fermented, and it's a big part of breakfast, like a big part of breakfast culture. So, yeah.
I don't know why I've never done that. Is that a thing in Nigeria, Tomi?
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, fermented porridges, particularly corn. Fermented corn porridge is a big one that we have for breakfast.
How do you do that?
Yeah, so Tomi, in Nigeria, I know, because in Ghana we have the corn one too, but do Nigerians also ferment like millet porridges?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And we also ferment cassava.
Yeah, we do that too. Yeah. So the porridges, in Ghana it's called Hausa Kuku, and the really interesting thing about West Africa is, like, in Nigeria, a lot of the people in the north are Hausa Fulani, and that tribe kind of goes all the way west. We don't have people who are indigenously Hausa, but it's kind of a culture that has spread across West Africa. So we ferment millet. That's the big one, millet porridges. We have a lot of grain porridges. We ferment corn porridges, and then we have a whole slew of swallows that we ferment that include cassava, corn, millet, the whole 9 yards. I mean, I guess people just didn't have fridges, so these are one of the ways that food can be preserved. Food is cooked one day, and then you have to repeat again the next day. So things that can be kept outside, people would prefer that.
Yeah, I was literally about to say the same thing. Like, I know about Ethiopian food, but it's very city knowledge, if you know what I mean. So, and it's like from my household, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know about all corners of Ethiopia. So we do have a huge fermentation culture as well. And it is out of necessity because, you have to ferment, preserve, cure. That's how you keep your food fresh. Interesting that you guys also have similar things, but it makes sense.
So, Tomi, how do you ferment corn porridge?
Yeah, so it's interesting because when Helen was sharing the process for making the Injera, it reminded me of when my mom used to make oki, which is the fermented corn porridge from scratch. Now, these days, you can actually buy it sort of pre-done for you in the super, like African grocery stores or online. But when I was growing up, the way my mom would make it is she would get maize, like maize kernels, which she would soak in this.
Are these dried kernels?
Was it dried or fresh? I can't remember.
Okay.
It might have been fresh. It might have been fresh. So she would have these like big baths of water, right? I remember it would fill the kitchen. Gosh, flashbacks. And she would put the corn in there and soak it in water for many days, maybe up to 3 days actually. And similar to the process Helen was describing, you would change the water frequently, just to kind of manage the rate of fermentation. Now, at the end of that period, you would grind it. You would grind the corn, and then there's a whole process of passing it through the sieve to like take off some of the shaft, and then leaving that liquid to settle. And when that liquid settles, most of the corn actually sinks to the bottom of the bowl. So then you're left with the liquid floating on the top, which you can discard, and then you kind of scoop that sort of corn sediment that settles, put it into a pot with some hot water, and then you kind of stir it, cook it like you would a regular porridge. And then you would add some sugar. I remember some people used to like having theirs with evaporated milk on it. But as a vegan, I don't do that.
But I remember evaporated milk. Oh.
Me too.
There is vegan evaporated milk now, actually. So I guess you could do that. It's just delicious. And we would have it for breakfast. We would have it served with akara that Afia mentioned earlier on, the bean cakes, and moi moi as well, which is the steamed bean cakes as well.
Amazing.
Perfect combination.
I got to try that. Helen, were there any other breads that you wanted to mention? Because I sort of hijacked that question.
Oh my God, there is so much. There's so much in Ethiopia. Like, when you asked that question, like, I was thinking about all the different breads. We have like anywhere from steamed bread made out of like wheat, as they say, from sorghum, corn. But it's like the taste is always slightly different. Also, like with some rye, barley, we combine different kinds. So for every occasion we have, and some of them are just specific to holidays, so that you only see them around that time. So it's like it could be the shape, the taste. And then we would also bake bread and cover it in false banana leaves. That's like traditional bread is made like that. And then we would add like the black cumin seeds in it as well, so additional flavor. And then sometimes there's this national dish called dorowet. So it's made chicken stew basically, and you also add that in your bread and bake it. And this is for a very, very, very special occasion. But I've only added like when I was really young, like someone's wedding. But we have so many breads, from like steamed bread, but the ingredients are mostly wheat, barley, sorghum, corn, but black barley, normal barley, just rye as well, and different combinations.
Wow.
But we do have lots of bread.
Well, there you go, Catherine. Turns out you asked a massive question there. But the biggest question of this podcast, something that we ask every time, is... What do you do with tofu? And you can go off piste here. Like, this doesn't have to be necessarily about the cuisine that we're asking about today. It's literally just, what do you do when you got a packet of tofu? Afia, let's start with you.
So tofu, I think a lot of people associate it with East Asia. But something that I'm really realizing is, so in the northern part of some of the West African countries, or just the northern part of the region, there's something called wagashi, which is a curdled cheese that they deep fry in peanut oil. Some communities, I know that for a fact in northern Ghana, would use soy instead of the dairy. And the process of making that cheese, it's like blocks, is very much like how you would make tofu. So you would because they grow a lot of soy up north in Ghana. So you would soak the beans, you would grind them, you will wash them, the liquid, you make soy milk, and they actually curdle it with the what they use to curdle from the dairy wagashi, and then they make solid tofu. And if you go through the depths of YouTube, I've seen some, I don't know, Tomi, if you've seen this, but I've also come across some Nigerians doing the entire process like this, and then it's deep fried in peanut oil into like little blocks. But this is a very recent discovery for me. Before that, I would usually use tofu in different West African dishes. So I have a recipe for a Senegalese tofu yassa, which is, yassa is a chicken dish or chicken or fish dish that's popular in Senegal. And it's lots of onions and lemon and like very sour flavors. It's delicious. So I just swapped the animal protein for tofu. Or in Ghana, we have, across West Africa, we have this peanut-based dry rub. We call it chichenga. I think Togo and Benin also call it chichenga, but it's Suya in Nigeria. And it's just a peanut-based dry rub I just usually use tofu for it. Or just like a tofu egg stew. Ghanaians are known for eating eggs. It's a running joke. I personally never cared for eggs. So this was the first thing that I quickly dropped when I transitioned into a vegan lifestyle. But like the egg stew has always been a part of my childhood. So I would just basically, it's tofu scrambled. It's like a tofu scramble, but with like tomatoes and pepper and ginger, just like typical Ghanaian flavors. And I serve it with like boiled plantains. So those are the three main ways I use tofu, obviously, and trying to, still leverage my Ghanaian cooking style. Yeah.
Amazing. Tomi, what about you? I know we've asked you before.
I can't even remember what I said last time, but a lot of similarities with Afia actually. In Nigeria, we call it tofu wara or wara tofu, and yeah, it's more popular in the north. But I remember having it even down south in Lagos as well. So for me, tofu, it's one of my favorite ingredients ever, especially extra firm tofu because it's the perfect meat substitute in a lot of our stews and soups. With typical Nigerian food, the stews are loaded with a whole bunch of different types of meats. And so if you're serving that to family, the first question, if it's vegan, is where's the meat, right? That's the question. And so a great way to sort of give the illusion, I guess, and give the texture and give the protein that's missing is tofu. So for me, I love to cut my tofu into blocks, bite-sized pieces. I either like roast it or fry it beforehand because I find the tougher it is, the better it does soaking up the sauce. So that's one of my favorite ways. And of course, scrambled tofu is a really big one. Unlike Afia, eggs were like huge for me before going vegan. They were really big for me, especially scrambled eggs. And so that was one of the first things I really kind of sought to veganize when I made the transition. And I found that scrambled tofu has been probably the best substitute for me, at least. And I like to cook mine with chopped onions, chopped peppers. I throw in some Scotch bonnet chili for some heat as well. A bit of turmeric to kind of give that color, and that's me, either scrambled or stewed.
I'll be around directly. Helen, what about you? What do you do with tofu?
I can't say it's my favorite ingredient. Basically, it was one of these classic things, where you just follow the recipe blindly, and it was never like how they say it. It was super crunchy. I was disappointed often, and just on a whim, I decided not to drain the tofu as much as people were recommending. And I was doing my thing in the kitchen one day and discovered I could make this amazing scrambled tofu that I think I almost died because I couldn't believe that it worked. Because basically I've tried to make, the little cubes and stir fries where you fry it before, you do this and that. It just never worked. And I was like, I'm not trying that again. I'm wasting so much food and my money. So, yeah. And then the key thing with my scramble is I discovered this Indian salt, the black salt.
Kala Namak.
You guys,
oh, yeah.
Life-changing.
Yeah.
Just that with some nooch. And of course, Ethiopians, we also make our eggs with tomatoes and onions. So you make this nice thingy base at the bottom. And then when you add the salt, it's on another level. Plus, I add clarified Ethiopian butter as well, which is I make it vegan, and that just takes it to a whole new level.
Thank you for those. That's brilliant. Ria has emailed. She has a question. My dad has been growing mushrooms in his garden during lockdown. Well, it's good to have a hobby. And I've got buckets of them at home. Does he not like them? Could I have some mushroom recipes, please? Tomi, let's start with you.
I actually have a recipe on my website for Suya spiced mushrooms. So Suya is this Hausa snack or food, which is usually made with thin slices of beef, which is coated in this Suya spice, which is made with peanut-based with a bunch of other spices thrown in there, lots of chili. Yeah. And then it's roasted and grilled, and I have great memories of that. But since going vegan, I do like to use mushrooms as a substitute for that. And I find that it works well because especially when you roast mushrooms, it takes on a slightly chewier texture, which works really well with it. And the mushroom shrinks as well. So you kind of get that slightly flattened feel with it. So that would be my sort of mushroom recipe to share. Yeah.
Very nice. Do you do the Derek Sarno double skillet thing? He takes out a cast iron skillet, puts his mushrooms in it, and then has another one which he then rests on top, and it just crushes them while they cook.
Oh, I haven't tried that.
It sort of packs them right down. Yeah, it seems like a good idea. I need to find
amazing.
2 skillets.
Yeah.
Oh, have you done that, Afia?
Yeah. It helps to drain out some of the extra liquid that mushrooms would have. So you put it in, I fry it in a cast iron, and I don't have another cast iron, so I just use a plate. Or like my parents have, when people are trying to smash down hamburgers and they have that metal, I don't know if, I think it's only at in restaurants and surprisingly my parents' kitchen.
It's kind of like an egg slice, just a flat.
Yeah, it's just a flat, and it just squeezes out all of the liquid, and it just leaves it really nice and crispy. And then I have my own homemade like suya, which we call chichinga, and then I just sprinkle it on top. 100% will recommend. Yeah.
Love it. I'm gonna try that.
That sounds really good. Helen, what about you?
Yeah, my relationship with mushrooms, same with tofu.
Okay. So, it's complicated.
No,
if you're on Facebook.
It's just no, seriously, I'm allergic to like the common mushrooms that you find in supermarkets. Like,
I knew you were classy.
And it gives me this like extreme intense stomach cramp, which I discovered. Yeah, just not pleasant. So, but there are some other kinds like king oyster mushrooms and oyster mushrooms that I'm okay with. So I'm like trying a little bit and seeing, okay, how is this with my stomach? Can I eat this? So I have to be super careful. I think it's maybe to do with like how clean they are and things like that. But not all mushrooms work with me. But when it works, so far I've experimented with king oysters and oyster mushrooms, and I just stir fry them and with Ethiopian spices. And the key thing is to have the clarified butter that you use to cook it in, and the berbere that I told you guys about earlier, and whatever veg you want to add in it, you can just chuck it all in. It's just fab. It's like you won't get enough of it. It's really, really delicious.
Tell me how you make this vegan clarified butter, because I need a drink.
Yeah, it's one of the most essential things I would say in Ethiopian cooking, and hard to get. But I've managed to like veganize it, and it works fine. So you'd use any vegan butter that you can find in any supermarket. And we do have a blend that I'm currently selling on the website, but it's made out of like mostly holy basil, rosemary, like different kinds of wet herbs and spices. And you have that blend where you kind of literally boiled your butter in that spice, and then it clarifies it. So normally it separates the water from the oil. And so let's say you're starting with like 2.5 kilos of vegan butter, and then you cook it, you will end up with like 1.5 or 2 kilos of oil at the end of it. So you have to literally let it boil, and it just gets infused right in the flavors. And then after that, you drain it, and then you have this amazing flavored oil that you can store in your fridge. Whenever you're making something, you can start with that. And then mostly I use it in the end because it just rounds out the flavors. And you can also use the oil to like dip it in your bread. It's just, it's a nice thing to have in your fridge. I did also post the recipe.
Any recipe that starts with take 2.5 kilos of butter, I'm in. Like that.
Cook it down. Cook it down, and it's basically like flavored butter, and you throw it in everything, and it gets stronger, the flavor, the longer you store it in your fridge, because it's sitting in the thing for longer, right? So for me, my fridge is always, it's got that. It wouldn't be Ethiopian without that. So if you have that, if you've got some berbere, you're good to go. Mushrooms, tofu, tempeh, whatever these things are.
Whoa. Now you just stop there. I mean, it sounds good, but I'm not having tempeh.
Try it with this. A little bit of my clarified butter and the Ethiopian berbere, and just close it all and hope for the best. It will come out right.
It does sound good. It's still tempeh.
That's my relationship with mushroom. There you go.
Okay, there you go. It's complicated. We're pretty much out of time. Liam, though, says, "Hi, panel. Loving the show. You helped me out a few months back on the barbecue episode with the Korean burger, and Rukmini's recipe worked a treat. Oh, I'm so pleased. Do let us know if you try stuff. It's always good to know. I don't have any advice to ask this time. However, I was wondering if everyone had to choose one meal they had to eat every day for the rest of their life, what would it be?" I love that question. Thanks so much, Liam. Tomi, let's start with you.
What a horrible question.
It is simultaneously wonderful and awful, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't actually make this that often, but if I could, I would. So I love pounded yam. And I love egusi soup.
Tell us what they are.
I can see the confused look on your face.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, it was hopeless, wasn't it?
But no. So pounded yam is made by boiling yam, and then traditionally you use a mortar and a pestle, a giant mortar and pestle, to sort of pound it to, I guess I can describe it as like a mashed potato consistency. But these days you can just use a food processor.
Tomi, clarify that it's West African yam, because some people will hear yam and then they will think it is sweet potatoes or like a sweet potato.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
So West African yam,
yam.
yes.
And so egusi soup is sort of like a spinach-based stew that is made with melon seeds that have been ground, added in with your spinach, with palm oil, different spices, lots of chilies, and so yeah, you eat the two together. And like I said, if I had the time, the energy to make this meal every day, I probably would.
That sounds like a classic kind of comfort food to me.
Yeah, it is.
Helen, what about you?
I'm obsessed with French fries. It's a problem.
You're in a safe space here. Very safe space.
Yeah. Also, like, I'm a huge fan of pizza, anything that is bread. I mean, every time I eat it, I just go on and how clever these people are. Just bread with tomatoes and cheese, and it's like, what do you want? Okay. But an Ethiopian favorite would have to be a chickpea stew that we make called shirowet. It's so simple, but also can be so elevated with the ingredients I mentioned earlier, like the clarified butter and the Ethiopian Berbere. It's basically like roasted chickpeas infused with loads of like herbs and spices, and you have this blend. All you have to do is mix it with water and boil it and add that butter I told you about. And then you have this amazing thing you eat with your Injera. Like, you can be broken, you have one finger, you can still cook that. You'll be fine. So that is one of my favorite foods. So those three, and then maybe like a tomato salad. So we have an Italian version of our own tomato salad that we make. So simple: fresh tomatoes, onion, garlic, good quality olive oil, lemon juice, with that chickpea stew I told you about. I can eat that on Mondays. I can have French fries on Tuesdays, and then pizza, and then we can start again the whole week.
Okay, fine. I mean, you're definitely.
Oh shoot! I forgot about pasta as well. Oh my God,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You got away with 3. I'm not giving you 4. Afia, what about you?
This was actually quite an easy choice for me. I love a lot of Ghanaian foods, but there's definitely tiers to it. In Ghana, we have this thing called red, and red is plantain, so sweet plantains that is fried. That's one part of the red, because in the Akan language, red cocoa, which is plantain, is also red. And then the beans is, you can have it in different ways. There's actual like a tomato-based bean stew that is made with a base of red palm oil. And I know people might freak out about palm oil, but it's indigenous to West Africa, so you find it in a lot of our foods. So it's like red palm oil with a tomato-based stew, or you can just boil the beans, which is black-eyed peas, which is also indigenous to our part of our West Africa. And then you can like cook like hot, you can basically boil the red palm oil. It has a consistency like coconut oil, so when it's too cold, it just like solidifies. When it's warm, it liquefies, and you can add spices to it and some chopped onions and just pour it on the beans. And then the icing on top is, the anglicized word for this is cassava couscous, but in West Africa we call it gari, and it's basically cassava that has been dried out, slightly fermented, and made into like little granules, and you just sprinkle that on top. And then they usually either sell it in banana leaves, but like I can make it at home. I can eat it for breakfast. I have had it for breakfast. My mom used to make it for us for breakfast. I can eat it for lunch. I can eat it for dinner. I can eat it every single day of the year, and I will be happy, has all the nutrients I need. So yeah, that was an easy choice for me.
That's a good choice. That was a good choice, Afia. And I actually learned something new. I had no idea that red referred to the plantain as well. I thought red referred to just the bean stew, but cool.
I can't thank you all enough. It's been an absolutely brilliant listen, and I've learned so much. If people want to find out more and hunt out your amazing work, where should they go? Helen, let's start with you.
They can find me on Instagram, Ethiopian Foodie, Twitter as well, but I'm mostly on Instagram because that's where it is at.
Yeah.
They can also visit my website, ethiopianfoodie.co.uk. My spice line is also on there. That's where
Perfect.
They can find me.
Afia, what about you?
I'm on all platforms as the Canadian African, and when I mean all platforms, I just mean Instagram and TikTok, and Pinterest if people are into that too.
I remember that.
Yeah. But yeah, you can find me on Pinterest as the Canadian African, Instagram the Canadian African, TikTok the Canadian African, my website thecanadianafrican.com, and YouTube the Canadian African. So everything, one word, one name. And come say hi. Gotcha.
So that was the the Canadian African. Tomi, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm everywhere as Vegan Nigerian. So vegannigerian.com is my website where you can check out more recipes. I'm most active on Instagram. I tried TikTok, couldn't get into it.
How's your flossing?
Awful. I'm on Instagram as Vegan Nigerian. Also on YouTube as Vegan Nigerian.
And there we really, though, have to leave it. Thanks so much to all of my guests. Our world tour continues. The next episode will be all about Mexican food. But the one after that is going to be all about Indian food. So if you've got any questions you'd like to put to some Indian food experts, why don't you email us? It's podcast@veganlifemag.com. We welcome your questions. While we're on the sort of online tip, hey, if you do Instagram, we're now veganlife_podcast on that. That's veganlife_podcast, where we'll have sort of extra bits and stuff and things and stuff. I don't know what the kids do, don't ask me. I mean, I'm on it a bit sometimes. I'll try and do it. Look, if you show up, I'll make more of an effort. Okay, that's my pledge. Also, please do subscribe and share this podcast if you're enjoying it. It would make a massive difference. Also, if you'd care to leave a review, you can't imagine what that does for our algorithm. My algorithm. Don't forget, Vegan Life magazine is on sale in shops, or you're online at veganlifemag.com. Also, you can subscribe there and save a bit of money off the cover price, or you can use the app. What we've got, what we're very proud of. Okay, that's it for now, though. From me, J Cap. Take care of yourselves, and see you next time. Bye bye.
This has been a Swanburst Media production.